Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Don Meadowcroft channel. I hope we're all having a good day. Of course, I am Don Meadowcroft. I am by myself once because usually I do record a podcast which will go out on this channel on Thursday today. But today I've got a day free, and I thought I'd just talk about what's been happening this weekend, and especially. Usually, I just sort of center around one sort of topic, and that's what I'm doing today. And I think it's the sort of talk about managers and the knee-jerk reactions that owners have nowadays, and the sort of indictment in football that it's a results business, and people don't see beyond the last few games. And I think this is a real talking point in football today, because the game that we're going to be talking about is Forest versus Leicester. But a little stat that I want to talk about is, since even the last filming that I did on this channel, which was the Rob Edwards and Watford sacking, which is, I got a little bit heated in that one. There has been 7 new managers in a full week. That is mental. That is one a day on average. And there's been 18 new managers since the start of the season, including 2 at Huddersfield. I think out of the 72, that's got to be some sort of record so far this season. And it seems like every other day there seems to be a new manager that's been either linked with somewhere or sort of pressured to be sacked under, the likes of even Jurgen Klopp has been talked about this season, which is mental to think about his last few seasons under Liverpool and how well he's done there. So, you talk about in the Premier League, Steven Gerrard had a couple of games in a row where he lost, and he's been talked about as not ready for the Premier League. And it's Steven Gerrard. He's one of the best Premier League players that has ever happened in history of the Premier League. And Brendan Rodgers at Leicester, the team that Forest played against, that we're going to be talking about in a second, he's had a lot of issues this season, and I don't even think it's his problem. I think it's the owners that haven't bought. And I think this one is almost like the opposite with Steve Cooper. And the question of the day is, are Nottingham Forest in trouble? Now, there is a couple of ways you can go about this sort of question. First of all, we're only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're only 8 games into the season, 7 or 8 games. Are Forest in trouble? To put it shortly, no. They're on 4 points, and to be honest with you, they have had a couple of tough games in there as well. But we're going to go back a little bit, because obviously Steve Cooper has some in the bank, doesn't he? He has some losses that he can have and still be fine, because obviously last season they lost the first 7 games of the season under Chris Hughton. He came in when they were bottom of the league after 1 point after 7 games. I remember I watched them play away at, or at home against, I think it was Bournemouth, and they look woeful under Chris Hughton, to be honest with you. And then when I watched them again 6 months later against Rovers, they look like a completely different team. And just because of that, I think that the fact that it's Forest's first season in the Premier League in 23 years, surely it means he's got enough in the bank to allow him to have at least till after the World Cup. But this is 2022, and these are the owners that we've got right now. Olympiacos, his owner as well, has shown in the past 13 or 14 seasons that he is ready to sack a manager whenever he feels like it. And I think they've had 15 managers in the last 14 years, which shows the sort of level of cutthroat business it is, especially under Forest, who, to be honest with you, have been underperforming in the last 20, 30 years. Look, they are a city and they are a big team, and that isn't a sign of you should be in the Premier League, but forever, essentially, but you should be there and thereabouts. And how this is the first season back in 23 years is insane as a city and how big they are. But I think the fact that they have spent 150 million or 170 million this season sort of raises the bar and raises the expectations of Nottingham Forest this season. I think that if they just stuck with this sort of normal amount of investment, then I don't think they would be talked about in this fashion, because 4 points after 8 games isn't horrendous. It's not like they've lost every game and got 1 point, is it? They've won a game, and it showed that they can get involved in the games, whereas sometimes some teams, when they come up to the Premier League, like your Cardiff, Huddersfield couple of seasons ago, Norwich most seasons, when they come up, Watford aren't great up there, are they? They just don't compete, and they do look poor, whereas Forest have competed in every game apart from a couple, obviously against City, Newcastle, maybe the first home game of the season. You could argue that they weren't involved in that game. They lost 2-0 there. But I think the 150 million pounds as well, it keeps getting put onto Steve Cooper, and I don't think it is necessarily his fault. You look at the amount of players that they lost during the summer. They lost as like Dan Garner and Keenan Davis, who were on loan, as well as the fact that they had 4 or 5 others on loan who were main players in the team, as well as the fact that they lost Bryce Samba, who didn't want to sign a new deal, so they got rid of him. Rightly so, I'd say, actually, to be fair, because you'd rather sell him now for some money in the Premier League than have him, if they do get relegated, leave on a free and, lose a lot of money, so essentially, in a pivotal time if they get relegated. They brought in Dean Henderson, and they have allowed the scouting business has been very busy this summer, hasn't it, with 22 new signings, and I think it will take time to gel. It's like arriving to a new school, but everyone's at the same time. Nobody's going to gel straight away, are they? And nobody's going to be in the same fashion. And I think really it does need time, but we do know football's this business, and we do know football is a knee-jerk reaction sector of the world, isn't it? And I think I'm very hypocritical in that fashion, because I'm the same. Like I just said before, the World Cup, obviously, the congestion is a big one as well. There are a lot more games than there should have been right now. We did start earlier than we usually do. I know in the Championship they have to play 23 games before the World Cup, and that is mental. They have to play another 12 or 13 games in. I'm just looking now; it's the 4th of October in 6 weeks, in fact. And like I say, let's have a look at how they figured out last night, as well as how they figured out this season. They did get battered, to be honest with you, and I think the last 3 games against Bournemouth home, against a Bournemouth team who didn't have a manager, lost against Liverpool, and were very low on confidence. They should have won that game. They were 2-0 up as well. I think if they won that game, this talk wouldn't have even happened, because they lost against Fulham, under the promoted side. Granted, they are a Premier League side, and they were last season, so it's that's the sort of caveat for that. But last night was poor, to be honest with you, against an East Midlands side. Half a derby, I'd say, because obviously Derby versus Nottingham Forest is the main one, but you'd say the one in the Premier League for them right now is Leicester, and they just didn't show up. They did have a couple of chances in the Brennan Johnson and when Lingard got put through and hit the post. Other than that, I don't think they were really in the game, and it does show like a side that are low on confidence. They look like a side that don't really know how to gel right now, and it makes sense. Like I just said, 20 new signings. It's a completely new squad, and I don't really understand that sort of theory why they'd even make that many, because you'd make 14 or 15, if you lose 7 or 8, and it is a long season, so you might need a bigger squad. But 22, don't think it needs it. I think they've cost themselves, and I think the fact that they were such a likeable squad last season and even into this season, but the fact that they've bought so many players has made them sort of slightly unlikable, as well as the fact that the expectations have risen. So they've sort of, cut themselves under the rug, and I think I don't think they're in trouble just yet, Forest, to be honest with you. But I will leave it to you guys. Do you think Forest are in trouble? Personally, I don't think so, but it doesn't look good right now, does it? And granted, in a couple of weeks, they might win 2 in a row, and it might be all happy days again. But right now, they look like they're only going one way, and I think it's only going to be that way until maybe January after the World Cup. The other question should be, is Steve Cooper in trouble? I think that he is more in trouble than Nottingham Forest this season, but who would you even bring in to replace him? Because I think Steve Cooper is doing the best of his ability right now. Whether or not the owners see that as well is a different question. But guys, this has just been a quick one under Nottingham Forest this season. I hope you all liked the video, and I hope you all enjoyed the channel that I'm trying to put out right now. There will be a Cal and Dom podcast this week, as well as we've got a special guest next week as well for episode 3 of the podcast. We are also on Spotify as well, so please go and give that a follow, give that a 5-star rating. Please go and like the video. Comment below what you thought of Steve Cooper and Forest this season, and I hope we all have a good day. Cheers. Thanks, guys.